G'day. So, I found a few things today. um, I've talked about recently how I really haven't been finding much at all over the last 2 months. Bits and pieces here and there, but there was like a patch there where I was finding like stacks of pretty good stuff every time I went near a shop. But I'm kind of what do you call it? Broadening the what's that phrase? Throwing my net further out, maybe. So this week I have my days off on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. My weekend kind of falls at random times. But so today I drove up to an area north of where I live, still part of my city, but kind of the northernmost reaches. And I know there is a handful of shops there that usually have, if maybe they don't have anything, but at least they have a decent range in which you can have a look at. So went up there, and yeah, they did have a decent range. I went to three different shops. One of them had very little. Two of them had quite a bit of stuff. One of them had quite a bit of stuff, but it was all uh, pretty rubbish. But the second place had both a lot of stuff and an okay amount of okay, like I wouldn't say amazing, great stuff, but okay stuff. The few other things that I could have picked up, but I didn't. But I will show what I did get. And if you watched the video I did last week, in which I showed the Tour of Duty soundtrack, I got where did I pick that up? It would have been about a week ago now, maybe a week and a half. And I got confused with the theme song. And then if you watch the video, I went back and I was googling while I was doing the video, and I realized that I'd confused Tour of Duty with another late 80s TV drama based on around the Vietnam War, and that was China Beach. And complete serendipity or synchronicity, or whatever you want to call it, this was sitting in the rack today where I was looking. It was actually down underneath the table at the back, and I was kind of picking up the last stacks that were kind of fallen over out the back, and this was in one of them. I couldn't believe it, just because I hadn't even thought about the TV show China Beach for like 30 years. I never actually watched it when I was a kid, but the one thing I could remember is that the Diana Ross and Supreme song Reflections, which is track one of this, was the theme song of one of those shows. I thought it was Tour of Duty, but then I read the Wikipedia and they said, no, that was Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones. And I thought, why have I confused those two? I searched and realized I'd confused these two very similar type shows, China Beach and Tour of Duty. Both came out in the late 80s, early 90s, both based around the Vietnam War. The other stuff on this, there's nothing really amazing. There's Janis Joplin, John Lennon, Stand By Me. There's some snippets taken from the TV show, like dialogue and other things like that. What I also notice is that they have some more recent artists, recent at the time, like 1990, doing some of the older songs, like Wilson Phillips doing A Reason to Believe, and Wendy Wall doing Time of the Season. Who does Time of the Season normally? It's not Wendy Wall, whoever it is. I can't remember who it is. But yeah, just some kind of 60-ish sounding stuff, but some of it done by the actual artist and some of it not. Not that great of a compilation, to be honest. Beyond the first song there, Reflections, which is one of my favorite Supreme songs. The other stuff's not that great. It's not as good a compilation as the Tour of Duty one. But anyway, just even if I looked at this and it was utter crap, I still probably would have picked it up just because of the very fact I was talking about it last week. That was $1. Everything I got today was $1. Second one, another thing I've been thought about for a long time, the Traveling Wilburys. This is volume 1. I don't know how many volumes there were. but I'm pretty sure I only ever heard this one. This is the one with the songs that most people, if they've heard of anything, these were the songs they would know. Handle with Care, End the Line, I guess are the two most famous. I think they were both singles. Tweeter and the Monkey Man, I don't know if that was a single, but I definitely remember that song from when I was a kid. My parents had the cassette tape of this. I remember them playing it in the car. So this came out in 88? And I remember one particular road trip where, so I've said before, I live in Auckland, New Zealand, which is kind of towards the top of the North Island. New Zealand's separated into two islands. And the capital city of New Zealand is called Wellington. That's at the bottom of the North Island. To drive from Auckland to Wellington takes about 8 hours, 8.5 hours, depending on traffic and other things. New Zealand roads aren't the greatest. They're not like gravel tracks or anything. It's just that they tend to, the road engineering here tends to go over and winding around mountains, where I notice in a lot of other countries, they go through the mountains. New Zealand's a pretty mountainous country, and the state, the main highway, I guess what in America you would call an interstate, or in UK, like the M's, M1, M5, well, we call it state highway. There's State Highway 1, which is the main road, which runs from the top of the North Island all the way to the bottom of the South Island, with a bit of water in between, which you get across by ferry. Anyway, what am I even talking about this? Oh, that's right, the road trip. I just remember we're driving in the car from Auckland to Wellington, 8-hour trip, and this album being played a lot. So the Traveling Wilburys, if you don't know, were George Harrison, Roy Orbison, Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, and Bob Dylan, which is a pretty amazing lineup. It's pretty amazing that they got these five guys decided to get together. Three of them have now passed away, and we're just left with Jeff Lynne and Bob Dylan. So Bob Dylan probably doesn't have that much longer left in him, does he? He's probably, if he's not 80, he must be pretty close to it. 82. Jeez. So, I'm not trying to be like a morbid or down or anything, but yeah, I was saying that in a few videos ago, how we're at this kind of time where that generation is kind of, passing away in ever increasing numbers. It seems almost every day that you read someone else has gone. And obviously those three kind of passed away relatively. Obviously, George Harrison, I think, was in his late 50s when he died of cancer. Roy Orbison, he seemed a lot older, but I think he was also in his 50s when he went. He had a heart attack. I remember it wasn't like he was in his, how old is he? Oh, 52. He was only 52. So, yeah, again, he just seemed old, eh? Because I guess he was older than these other guys. Tom Petty, how old was he when he passed away? He passed away from, I don't know if it was like an overdose, but I think there was like, what do you call it? Fentanyl or one of those types of synthetic opioids was involved, I'm pretty sure. God, my internet is absolutely horrific at the moment. What is going on? So maybe he was a little bit before his time, Tom Petty. 67. Okay, so yeah, for a rock star, I guess 67 actually is kind of old. Jeff Lynne, I don't know how old he is. He'd probably in his 70s by now, surely. And you think about it, how many have we got left? We got of that kind of top echelon of stars from the 60s. We got Paul McCartney and Ringo, I guess, if you want to put Ringo with him. Bob Dylan, Jagger, Keith Richards, because Charlie Watts is gone. Who else? Bowie's gone. I guess, or the Page and Plant are still going. Tony Iommi's going, but they're all getting on. Ozzy Osbourne, they're all getting on, and they've all kind of had So a lot of them had battles with cancer and or other things. I think Tony Iommi's had cancer at least once. Ozzy, I think, has got Parkinson's now, doesn't he? Or something like that. I guess my point is that, yeah, these guys haven't got long left. We're kind of seeing the twilight years of these of the legends of that first, or maybe second wave of rock and roll. I guess the first wave was more the 50s, like Elvis and Chuck Berry and that kind of stuff. A great album though. Just you can hear all the guys. They all take different turns singing or harmonies, and it sounds like a combination of all their musics together. If you imagine trying to meld the sounds of Tom Petty and George Harrison and Bob Dylan and so on and so forth, you would get the Traveling Wilburys. A classic album, Crowded House, their debut. I'm pretty sure it was their debut. Actually, I'm not sure if it was. This came out in 86, I think? 87, 86, it says here. So Crowded House are a band that are important in New Zealand because the founding member and frontman and main songwriter, Neil Finn, is a New Zealander. Talked about him before when I talked about Split Enz. But he formed Crowded House in Australia with two Australians, and so some people say it's an Australian band, some people say it's a New Zealand band. I think it's an Australian-New Zealand band, a New Zealand-Australian band. I don't really give a shit where they're from. I like Neil Finn. I think he's a pretty amazing songwriter. If you listen to the songs he's written throughout his career, even the stuff that I don't listen to a lot, you just put it on, you can just tell someone is a great songwriter, even if you don't necessarily love every song they do. This is, I was going to say, maybe their most well-known album, because it's got Don't Dream It's Over on it. So the first song on there, Mean to Me, that's probably one of my favorite Crowded House songs. Starts off with one of their classic lines, mentioning a small town in New Zealand, Te Awamutu, which is where the Finn brothers were born and brought up. Was it? She came all the way from America, had a blind date with destiny, and the sound of Te Awamutu had a truly sacred ring. Now her parents are divorced and all her friends committed suicide. I think that's how it goes. Where are we? There it is. She came all the way from America, blind date with destiny, and the sound of Te Awamutu, there it is. It's just strange hearing Te Awamutu mentioned in a rock song. If you knew Te Awamutu, it's like kind of a little farming town in the Waikato region of New Zealand, and it's kind of feels out of place to mention in a song, but also quite cool to mention in a song. Well, Where You Live, Now We're Getting Somewhere, Don't Dream It's Over, which got to number 2 on the US Billboard charts. Something So Strong, another big song. But yeah, great album by a great band. And I picked that for $1. This was originally $11.99. I wonder when that was, because that's actually a pretty good price for a CD. If this was in New Zealand, a $11.99 CD back in the 90s would have been an absolute bargain. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's £11.99. Because I don't recognize that sticker. Usually if it's a New Zealand retail sticker, I recognize it from my youth, but that one I've never seen before, so it might be from another country. This one, also $1. I thought she'd charge me $2, because usually for these double ones, they'll just double it up, which is fair enough, but she goes, we'll just do $1 for all of them. Clapton Backtracking. I've never ever seen this compilation of Eric Clapton's before. The one that you usually see around of his is The Cream of Eric Clapton, which is kind of a career-spanning compilation. This is a similar kind of idea. It's a double disc, but it covers, so you see it's got 4 kind of categories across the disc. So disc 1's got singles and history. Compact disc 2 has got classics and live. Probably should have left off live and just done something, put some more of his other songs on there. But I do see that they've got the live version of Crossroads, which, if it's the one I think is actually a pretty good version. That's one live version that I do appreciate. So what do we got? We got Shot the Sheriff, Knocking on Heaven's Door, Lay Down Sally, Promises, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, Wonderful Tonight. History, we've got some stuff from Cream, Sunshine of Your Love, Tales of Brave Ulysses, Badge, No White Room, come on, Little Wing, taken, and Layla from Derek and the Dominoes. Classics, we got Cocaine, Strange Brew, Spoonful, Let It Rain, Have You Ever Loved a Woman, Presence of the Lord from Blind Faith. And Live, Crossroads, Roll It Over, Can't Find My Way Home, Blues Power, Further On Up the Road. So we've got stuff taken from his solo work, stuff taken from Derek and the Dominoes, stuff taken from Cream, stuff taken from his solo again, and from Blind Faith. So pretty much all the projects he was involved with, which is quite unusual because usually there will be different record companies involved, and so it's hard to get things released across record companies onto one compilation. I think I've talked about before how the other artist I know who does that is Sting, where he will release greatest hits, or he has in the past at least, released greatest hits compilations of the Police and his solo work on the one thing together. Maybe he got a record deal with whoever the Police were with, I assume. So yeah, that's not bad. It's kind of interesting. Something, like I said, I've never seen before. Never seen it around. Maybe it was never released in New Zealand. I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know what year. When was this? When this was put together. It looks like it's from kind of the 80s. Just by going for that design aesthetic. It looked very 80s, doesn't it? It's manufactured in West Germany. 84. Okay, well, it's really old. 84. And finally, CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival, featuring John Fogerty's Chronicle, the 20 Greatest Hits. Now, this is another thing I've noticed. Actually, that's not important, don't worry. So I think I actually have another similar thing of this. A CCR compilation interspersed with some John Fogerty's solo work in between, which this looks like it's a similar thing. This was released in 1991. This is put out by Fantasy Records, which was the original company, a record company that CCR are on, and then also the company that John Fogerty spent a good 10, 20 years fighting and suing and getting sued by, what's his name? Saul Vance, the guy who ran Fantasy Records and who basically ripped off the band completely, and John in particular. There's a lot, whatever to say about their music. I think everyone knows CCR's music. They've got some of the most recognizable songs in rock history, and so many of them as well. You go through all these: Proud Mary, Bad Moon Rising, Lodi, Green River, Down on the Corner, Fortunate Son, Who'll Stop the Rain, Looking Out My Back Door, Heard It Through the Grapevine, Have You Ever Seen the Rain? How many of those are just you hear on classic rock radio every single day? They are up there with some of the most iconic songs of that era. But they were. There's a lot of really good, two in particular, career synopsises of CCR on YouTube. One of them is by that guy who does Train Records, meaning train wreck chords. So he takes the album of a band that made great albums and then made one particular shit album, which is Mardi Gras, their last album. He focuses on that. And he kind of goes into the background of the band and what had happened up to that point. And then there's another one I just watched the other day. It focuses more on John Fogerty in particular and the breakup of the band. And then, like I said, the legal battles he had for like 20 to 30 years after the band broke up, and the relationship between the different members, and especially him and his brother. Really well researched and well produced videos. Just by by some random YouTubers. They're not professional, as in, like they're not documentaries, as in, you know what I mean, professionally done. But they're very, very interesting. And it's just one for the fact that most of those songs I just listed off there were written within the space of 18 months. Like they were only together for like 2 years, and all their hit songs were written in 18 months. John Fogerty was just on an absolute tear. And then the rest of the band, Tom, his brother, Stu Cook, and Doug Clifford, basically sabotaged the band. I guess they might see that differently, but yeah. I've kind of come to appreciate this band a lot more the older I get, for many reasons. But just the fact that they wrote all those songs in that John Fogerty wrote all those songs in that short amount of time. It blows my mind. Anyway, that was $1 as well. So some pretty decent things, but a lot of greatest hits type things. But nonetheless, pretty happy with most of those. We'll leave it there. Thanks for watching.